and some of the things that were important in terms of eventually leading you here, and then we will get into the topic, which is European dictators and the Second World War. Let's start it from that perspective.
Well, as you already said, my name is Alana McLaughlin. I am a 6th grade student at John Early Padilla Museum Magnet Middle School. I remain an honor roll student, which is all A's and B's, and sometimes maybe all A's, depending on how hard the course is. And so those are the basic facts about my education. Now, when you talk about my background, I am involved in many activities, such as at school, I'm on the debate team, and I think in about March, I believe, we had a debate championship where I was given the title the best debater out of all these children that we've been in debates with. Like, and it's like 200 children from all around Tennessee. Like, some could be from Madison, some could be from Coffee County. Like, these are so many children from so many different places, and to be like the best debater out of all of them, not just the best in my place, but the best debater, I think that's something I feel like mentioning. And I'm also involved in the children's ministry at my church. I am what they like to call a senior acolyte, which means I've been doing acolyting for as long as I could basically understand what I was doing. And so those are some of the many things that I'm involved in, and I am also I'm about to be involved in Derby, which is the art of skating. It's like a sport. And so, yes, those are some of the many things I'm involved in.
Very good. And so, Alana, the topic that you've selected, and I think our audience understand that most of these topics you select, in a real sense, you've been able to bring us quite a bit of information in all of these topics. But we, again, believe that the one dealing with European dictators and the Second World War is a topic that certainly should have a lot of information, and we're hoping that you can give us that kind of information. When we talk about European dictators in the Second World War, what are we talking about when we talk about dictators? Who are some of these European dictators that we talk about?
Dictators are basically like rulers who make all the rules, who judge everything, who basically they own everything. They own you, they own the courts, the police. That's a dictator, a ruler of that area, that country, or that, state. There could be dictators anywhere. I could be the dictator of this show. Because there are dictators everywhere. You may not know it, but that's the true definition of a dictator.
And so when we talk about European dictators during the Second World War, who are some of these European dictators that we're going to eventually talk about during the second part of this show, the second segment of this show? Why don't you give us sort of an overview of the dictators that you'd like to speak to?
Now, today we're going to be talking about Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, and Mussolini, which are some of these dictators. Like Adolf Hitler was the Chancellor of Germany. These are all dictators, European dictators. And so that's what you mean when you call a dictator. Like, I know when most people think about Adolf Hitler or Stalin or Joseph, they think of, they're so mean, they kill people. And that's basically all they think. They just think there's somebody that went around and killed somebody. What they thought was that they were in a higher place of authority than the average person or the president. They thought that they were the ruler of it. They ruled everything. If you didn't dress the way they liked, you got killed. If you didn't do something that they liked, you got killed.
And so these European dictators that we're going to talk about after this first segment is over are people that you've identified as leaders of the heads of states. That is, they have the political situation under control, they have the judicial situation under control, the legislative situation under control, but now you want to deal with specific individual dictators, and those dictators include Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, and Mussolini. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break, and we will get into a discussion of some of these dictators that we've already outlined. Thank you. Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. The topic is European dictators and the Second World War. And Alana has already identified several of the European dictators during the Second World War that she would like to talk about. And so, Alana, let's get right into this whole issue of European dictators by talking about some of the three dictators that you've already mentioned, and give us some information in reference to that, and then we'll build up on the information. And by the time we get into the third segment, we'll have quite a bit of information in reference to them. Go on, give us that kind of information.
Adolf Hitler. What do you think of when you hear Adolf Hitler?
Well, I think of the Holocaust. I think of the World War II. I think of just a number of things. I think of brutality. But what do you think of, and why don't you talk about Adolf Hitler?
When I hear Adolf Hitler, I think of Anne Frank, her diary, the struggles that Jewish people had to go through, the pain that they suffered, the concentration camps that they were found in later after the Holocaust had ended. And now, Adolf Hitler, when you have to expand on this basically, you can't just say, oh yeah, he made the Holocaust, blah, 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 blah. It was so much more than that, so much more than that. I mean, he killed many people. He took lives that didn't belong to him. And I mean, and he just took lives and took lives. If you did something, if you did the slightest thing that he did not like, you were gone. And so that's what I think of when I hear Adolf Hitler. Now let's expand more on who Adolf Hitler was and why he is such an important part of this show today. Adolf Hitler was the Chancellor of Germany. He was born in Austria and died in Germany when he was assassinated. Now, he was an aggressive person growing up. He always was, and he grew up to be. He was the leader of the Nazi Party. What do you think of when you hear Nazis, the word Nazi?
I think of Adolf Hitler again, and the leader of the party. Go on and speak to it.
Now, Nazis were a group of people who basically thought that they were better than everybody else. Like, if I happened to walk down the street and I walked across a Nazi, I would get sneered at. I would probably get pushed or teased or laughed at because of the color of my skin, because I was African American. But luckily, I've never crossed over a Nazi. And now the Nazi Party is still, I don't really want to say alive, but still, they're not they're active, but they don't cause riots or anything, I believe. They're a party who think they are in a higher class of everybody else. Like, there's low class, middle class, higher class, and then there's them. That's what goes on in their head. And they think that God sent them on the world to be better, basically, that they're supposed to be better, and they're supposed to mistreat people who aren't like them or who aren't them. And so that's what you think of when you hear the Nazi Party. But now let's focus on Adolf Hitler. Now, this man who was famous for the Holocaust, most people think that his actions, his aggressive foreign policy, is what caused the Second World War. He thought that he was so much better, and that when he caused all this ruckus, that's what people think of when they think that he started the Second World War. And do you think that's true? Or?
He did. He actually started the Second World War in 1939.
In 1939.
By the invasion of Poland. Go on.
Exactly. And so he liked to see this. He liked to see him having power over something or somebody. I mean, because if he didn't have power, then he would be mad, and then he would assign somebody to be killed for his own personal pleasure. But I just can't see how someone would enjoy seeing millions and millions and millions of innocent people. I mean, these people weren't criminals. These people never did anything to you. They were innocent people that got killed for what they believe in, what they look like, their orientation, what they were. If they weren't Adolf Hitler, if they weren't part of the Hitler family, then they were apparently nothing to you.
Why don't you give us some examples of some of the killing and some of the tragedies that Hitler caused the Jewish people? Anne Frank, for example, or something.
Yes, the most famous death that happened in the Holocaust was Miss Anne Frank. She had a diary, and she kept all of her experiences about the Holocaust in that diary. And when she had passed away, her father found the diary, and he planned to be able to, and he made sure that that book was published and that everybody got to see how horrible the Holocaust was. And that's what he did. It's been published in almost all languages. It's so many languages like German or English. And so, yeah. And so that's how important Anne Frank was to the Holocaust. And and she's basically the most, she's what people think of when you hear Holocaust. You think, you immediately think of the Diary of Anne Frank. You just right on the spot. And she was so much more than that. She wasn't just an author. I mean, she didn't even plan to be an author. She was just a regular girl who kept a diary.
Very good. And so in a real sense, you've identified Adolf Hitler as perhaps one of these dictators, and I think you've indicated that a dictator is a person that controls the government, the political
They're
government,
the ruler of everything,
and et cetera. And now, what do you think over the last 2 minutes that we have during this segment? What do you think that were some of the most destructive things that dictators did outside of actually killing people?
I think that was the worst thing that they did. I mean, they killed people, they ruined families, they separated families. They did so much to these people, to innocent people that didn't deserve this. And they were killed because of what they believed in.
Well, if you looked at these dictators, how would you classify them in terms of how they suppress folks' freedom and their citizenship and perhaps their right to vote? Did they control that aspect of the lives of millions?
They took away every right that the people in that country had. They took away the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, the right to vote, the right to citizenship, and the right to be able to be a citizen.
To be free.
To be free, right.
And in a real sense. And so in a real sense, these dictators that you've identified in Europe during the period of the Second